Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Captain Jim Palmer. Welcome to another fantastic live episode of Dream Business Radio. As I said, I'm your host, Captain Jim, and Stan and I are battling some Wi-Fi issues, which is probably my fault since I'm in this rolling tin can here, otherwise known as my mobile home. Anyway, I'm the founder of the Dream Business Mastermind Coaching Program, creator of No Hassle newsletters, and again, host of Dream Business Radio. It's a podcast I created in 2009 to help you grow your dream business. And this is episode 591. And let me tell you about my guest today, Stan Gibson. And Stan is a corporate executive turned author, speaker, leadership consultant, and he has become a very, very much a sought after speaker throughout the U.S. for his message that both inspires and engages others to greatness. Stan is a longtime corporate real estate executive with over 35 years of leadership with Fortune 500 firms. His ability to mix and communicate strategies on the athletic field and in the business world is timely to all leaders wanting to reset at home and in the workforce. Stan has a tremendous passion for well-being as a consultant, helping business leaders and their teams through transformation as they learn to trust, engage, and create clarity. Clarity is very important, by the way. His passion for leadership inspired his best-selling book, Living a Rich and Intentional Life. And Stan, on the personal side, is married to Sharon for 42 years. I only got you by one, Stan, we're 43. Together, they have created a passion for servant leadership and contagious spirit of enthusiasm. I think that all got out with any glitches. How you doing today, Stan?
Hey, I'm fine, Jim. If we didn't lose him there, then maybe we got a chance at making this work. That was a little bit of a long, career story on me. But hey, let's get into this and let's have some fun, Jim.
Yeah, as you and I were both talking for about 10 seconds before we pushed live, and folks, yes, I know we're a little tardy. I think I'm going to blame myself because I am on portable Wi-Fi, but yeah, it was just. Stan's got I met him, I'm going to say about a month ago. I said, man, I need to have you on my program. But Stan, let's start at the beginning. I'm guessing when you were in high school pondering your next move, you probably didn't say to yourself, you know what? I really want to become an author, speaker, and leadership consultant. So what happened? Did you go to college? Fill in a little bit of the blanks before in high school and starting your own business.
That's a great question. Yeah, I really haven't been asked that question going back to that point in time. But, it's funny you do ask it because I grew up on a farm. In fact, I said, my wife and I, okay, so you got us by a year in marriage, but we've known each other since third grade. So we grew up in the Midwest. Oh, we grew up in the farm.
You got us beat with that then.
Yeah, I thought I would find a way to one up you there, but no, I'm just kidding. So the farming. In the summer, if you want a job, and I know that a lot of you may not know what I'm talking about, but we either walked beans, which means that you just walked endlessly bean fields, pulling out weeds for $2 an hour, or you baled hay, you put it into the hot tin, metal barn. Or the third thing was, you became a pig farmer. And so I had all three of those, but it was that day on the pig farm that it was like 98 degrees and 100% humidity. And I was out there in the lot and I just said, you know what? I don't know how. I don't know where. But somehow I'm gonna wear a white shirt someday and I'm gonna have an office. And so that became my defining moment. And even when I speak today, I will oftentimes ask audience, what was your defining moment? When did you say enough is enough? And I'm not going to take, a job like this. So anyway, not to make that the whole story here, but yeah, that was my time. And I said, I'm going to college. I'll find a way to get through it. And it's been nonstop ever since.
So do you do a lot of, let's say pre-COVID, did you do a lot of traveling, and is that back up and running, or have you shifted to more Zoom style?
I do both. And in fact, before COVID, I worked, I've got 40 years as, working for Fortune 500s or as an entrepreneur. But the last 13 years before I left this business, had a team and we did all the real estate strategy for Wells Fargo globally. So yeah, I do travel. I've traveled a lot in my lifetime in my real estate career. But I would say, yeah, I still do about half and half. There are a lot more opportunities right now, especially since I do a lot of keynote speaking. I do a lot of corporate speaking, but there are people who say, hey, can you do this virtually? And yeah, that's fine. That's the world we live in today. I'm working with a team next week, and they're global. And so I start at 5:30 in the morning because we're with people from Asia and around the world. So the virtual piece, it works. But I so much prefer in person if we can do it. But I'll do it either way.
When you're doing virtual, I mean, and you start at 5 in the morning, I'm guessing you have a button-up shirt here and you're still in your sweatpants down below, most likely, right? Not to tell any secrets out of school.
Well, if you're watching this right now, I actually do have sweatpants on right now, and we can live in a lot more. It's funny. I've got enough decades under me. I can remember going to work in a three-piece suit. I can remember back when they introduced Casual Friday, and it's like, who's going to put some definition around that? It looked like the company picnic after about 3 weeks of people showing up. So I've been through all the phases, and I've often said, even though I did in my 20s, I had that nice class office, I had that white shirt. I've never been more happy now taking my scooter down to the coffee and pulling up.
My late father-in-law was one of the early space engineers with General Electric, and back at the black suit with the thin black tie in the 60s. And I remember years ago when Casual Friday came in, he'd go, this is the beginning of the end of corporate America. Well, he probably wasn't terribly wrong, but
no.
That was so funny.
Yeah, I agree. People all have a different sense of what fashion should be.
Stan, I know you do a bunch of keynotes, and I know two of the most popular ones you do. One of them is called From Worst to First, 5 Keys to Unlocking the Impossible. And I know IM is in kind of parentheses there. Tell us a little bit about that for those people who might not get a chance to see you speak.
Sure. It actually was quite, it was really a defining moment for me as it relates to leadership. I went to a college called Eastern Illinois University. And at Eastern Illinois, it was very ironic because when I went there, it was my freshman year, and it was, I thought this team's going to be awesome. And they lost every game of the year until the last one. They went 1-10. And I was just blown away because I knew the talent was good. And so to me, you don't keep your job in college football if you lose 10 games. So they fired the coach, brought in a new guy by the name of Daryl Mudra. And Daryl Mudra, he was also known as Dr. Victory, but he had some really interesting leadership techniques in that he came in and he said, you know what, gentlemen, I know nothing about football. And that was the first thing he did. He had authenticity. He didn't come in and try to tell us, hey, I'm, and again, with a nickname like Dr. Victory, wouldn't you think he's going to come in and tell you how great he is? But he actually said, the most success I've ever had was coaching my grandson's Pee Wee football into the city championship. But what he did was he had that authenticity, which is a part of leadership. Know who you are, know who you're not. The second thing he did was he hired a pretty good staff of 20, early 30-year-old coaches. In fact, one of them had just went to Eastern Illinois University 3 years earlier, by the name of Mike Shanahan, who has 3 Super Bowl rings.
Oh my goodness!
And his son, who just coached, the 49ers in the Super Bowl, wasn't even born yet. Tells you how old I am. But so Mike wasn't even the coach that was supposed to make it to the NFL. He's got others on that staff that one of them is the Hall of Fame for historical black schools, HESCB. But anyway, he could pick talent. So he's authentic. He's very authentic. He can pick talent. And then he said something else really great, Jim. He said, so while we're going to be the coaches, each and one of you out there, all you are really the most important part of this process, because when you're out there in the field, if you're getting beat or if you're beating the guy across. If we don't know that information, we can't make in-game adjustments. We just can't. And in fact, Daryl Mudra, he was so unique. He coached from the press box because he said, I really don't know what's going on. I'm just here to kind of put the whole thing together. Think about CEOs today. or running your company where you're authentic, B, you know how to pick talent, and C, you have a people-centric organization where you're relying on them as much as they're relying on you. And I'll give you the real kicker to this worst to first. My freshman year, they went 1-10. Now, not in my best judgment, but I redshirted my sophomore year, which actually the very next year, they won the national championship. So they went from worst to first. And the ironic thing, Jim, is same talent. Yeah, they brought in about 4 or 5 really good players that wasn't what they did was they put the players that were there in the right position. The quarterback moved out to a wide receiver. The linebacker had to think too much. They put him on the edge to rush. He became an All-American. And they had all these All-Americans within 1 year, and it was the same players playing on a 1-10 team.
I wonder how that would go over today. I mean, I love the message. And when you said, with the, I'm not the best and the other thing, I wonder how that would go over today. I mean, when you hire somebody like the leader, head coach, or the CEO, or whatever, you expect them to have that gravitas, right? That confidence. But it's almost like admitting I have faults, but it's okay because you guys are great too. That's kind of what I heard. Maybe I misheard it, but I was obviously very successful, right?
No, but I'll tell you what, I think is very relevant today, because when he came in, I will tell you what, while he did not understand or know the X and O's as well in football, he made it very clear he understood people. And he was a student of philosophy. He understood Socrates. He understood all the Greek philosophies. And so he had a mind. And I've said this, I've been on, a lot of, even in my keynotes and a lot of podcasts, I've said, a lot of people get elevated because they're smart. And really, even with artificial intelligence, the playing field is getting leveled even more and more. Life is an open book test. But the part that's not is the emotional intelligence. It's the ability to take that information and work with people. And that's really where a lot of my consulting and my coaching comes in, is helping leaders and managers on the emotional intelligence portion. And then the other piece where I'm kind of unique is that I have all this research. I'm just a geek when it comes to well-being. When it comes to how the brain works, how the body works, how do you get out of burnout? How do you get the best, the most optimal amount of sleep, nutrition, exercise? What are the right routines? How big do routines play in your life? What are the metrics you're supposed to be looking at to make sure that you've got enough energy? So when I say metrics, in fact, I was just on a meeting with a client this morning, and we started talking about, there's different types of measurables that you can use. One is a Whoop. Another one is I use a Garmin products to measure my sleep and my stress. A third is an Aura ring, but there are different wearables. And so I get into the well-being aspects of leadership, as well as the EQ, or the emotional intelligence as well.
Burnout to me is one of the biggest threats to companies today, especially, larger companies with big teams, but even solopreneurs. Is that something that you've seen just like in the last 10 years? Has that been progressively getting worse, or how big of a problem is burnout?
It's a good question. I think it's getting worse. But as I say that, I mean, because of the pandemic, a lot of people are able to level set a little bit by working at home. And of course, people are trying to bring them back into the office, which I don't think there's an absolute. I don't think I don't think it should be 100% in the office nor 100% at home. But I will say that, the pandemic did force people into saying, I can be effective and have a life balance being at home. And I realize that employers pay the checks. They're the one that take on the risk. So there is a certain amount of collaboration in bringing them back in the office. I have some very definite opinions on that, given that I was in corporate real estate for a very long time. And, I not only found the brick and mortar for people to office in, but I had to know how they office best and where they office best. So I do believe that there is a lot more work to be done. But you asked a question, are people burnt out? Yeah, people are burnt out. There's so much more global responsibilities. I'm working with a client that, as soon as we started, she just said, I'm gassed. I got nothing in the tank. And before we could even start working on coaching, we had to work on her.
Yeah.
And I often say, if you're not well at home, it's going to carry over into work. And if you're not well at work, it's going to carry over at home. And so, we had to sit down and start to look at the routines from the time she got up in the morning. And of course, it involved, turning on the TV, watching a lot of bad news. It was, getting into email and getting into stress from, within the first 10 minutes of waking up. It was donuts. It was this, it was that. We totally revamped her health style. And within 2 months, she just said, my goodness, I've never had this kind of energy. And so you've got to look at your morning routines. You've got to have good evening routines, and you've got to know the whys. And I love telling people, it's one thing for me to kind of suggest what to do. It's another thing to know how the brain and the body works and why it responds to these healthy routines.
Well, that's so, man, I could go 20 different rabbit holes on that, but I got to keep moving on. It's interesting what you said there about there's no success at home with it. Well, I'm paraphrasing, but one of my earliest mentors who I loved reading his books was Zig Ziglar, and he used to say that too, right? He used to date the redhead every day, until she passed, or I forget if he passed or she passed first, but it was like their whole life dating, because there was no such thing as success at work if you don't have success at home, right? So you wrote this book, Living a Rich and Intentional Life. What a crazy cool title. Tell me about your book. When did you write it, and what's it about, Stan?
Well, Jim, never let a good pandemic go to waste. So, we had that
you had all this time on your hand.
Yeah, so because I'm very active. I'm always out, I'm golfing, I'm playing softball, I'm doing something. But she couldn't do that during this time frame. So anyway, I'd had people for years, because even though I was in the corporate world, I was still doing a lot of motivational speaking. And I was also, I was kind of working on Plan B for about 10 years. But I kept having people tell me, you need to put this into a book. You need to put this into a book. So that was a great time to go ahead and put it into the book. And, one of the first chapter is, and I'll just give it away, is, about 8 to 9 years previous to that, my wife and I were having dinner. And we were out, at a nice little restaurant, and a friend walked by. And I mean, this guy's like, I just admire this guy so much, because he's not only CEO of a company, he and his wife have a marriage ministry across the world, and he's a foster parent, and he's just this amazing human being. And he walked by, and hey, we caught up for about 5 minutes. Hey, we haven't seen each other for a while. Hey, we need to get together. He walks away. And then about 5 minutes later, he walks back. He says, I just feel like I need to tell you. He said, I've got a very rare form of cancer. And he said, I have probably a 50-50 chance of making it for 5 more years. And I just wanted you to know. And of course, you don't know what to say. When somebody says something like that, your jaw drops. And so, he leaned in though. And he said, while I wish I didn't have this diagnosis, Stan, he said, it's been the most fascinating 90 days of my life. I've had these conversations with my wife we've never really had before. I've taken my kids on separate vacations and said, what do you need from dad before he leaves? And even at work, I've moved from being CEO to chairman, and I've delegated work to some of the people that really can do it even better than I can. And he said, so I've had this great transformation. But then he looked and he said, you know what? When death becomes certain, life becomes rich. When death becomes certain, life becomes rich. And when he said that, Jim, it made me think, why do we wait to get sick to get well?
I know.
Why do we wait in life? And we think we're so invincible. And why do we wait for that time to say, now I'm going to get serious about life? So I then kind of coined the term rich and intentional life, because I believe that we need to be intentional. I wish somebody would have told me when I was in my 20s or 30s what intentional meant. I think I probably violated most of the rules I should have. It was all about me. But now I love to go back and coach people on living a rich and intentional life, Jim.
You say that, and everything you said is people should really take to heart. But I'm not even sure if I shared, when I was 41, I was diagnosed with melanoma, and we didn't know if it was stage 2 or stage 3. And I had no even clue what melanoma was. And the surgeon said, I said, what is this stage 1, 2, 3? Well, if it's stage 2, your chances, on average, your chance of being alive in 5 years is like 80%, 80-20. To me, I'm like, I was told I had cancer like 2 weeks ago. Okay, those are pretty good odds, I thought. And I said, well, doc, what if it's stage 3? He goes, well, it's 50-50, which hit me like a ton of bricks. And it was definitely a defining moment in my life, and it changed how I live, how I view things. But it's interesting that it's almost like it's like a gift, especially if you survive and you keep going, but it's hard. And you and I can share that with other people, Stan, but it's almost like you don't know what it's like until you face that, right? Um, it's such a defining moment, I guess, right? So,
It really is. And, in fact, one of the things I often, and there's, in fact, I gave you the first chapter of the book. I'll give you the last chapter too. So you can kind of speed read to the end, but I talk a little bit about, I always say that leaders need to be a little selfish to be very selfless. And what I mean by that is, my wife was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, stage 4, back in 2018. It was in her bone marrow. It was obviously very serious. And, although this was all about her, I had to start kind of owning up to what I preach to others. I had to take care of me because, I had to be a little selfish. I had to, I started getting up earlier. I started getting up at 5. I was going through, workouts, prayer, meditation. I was going through all the things I coach clients on how to do, mind, body, and soul, because I figured, the first hour and a half needed to belong to me, because the next, 15 waking hours had to belong to her. I was also, in charge of a team that, managed, a couple $1 billion worth of real estate. I had other commitments. In order for me to take care of all these responsibilities, I had to take care of me first. So that became a big part of living a rich and intentional life, is you've got to take care of you so that you can be a servant leader and take care of others.
Yeah, you can't pour from an empty cup, as they say.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
I love the conversation. Let me steer it a little bit back toward one of the things that when I came across your name is you have something people-centric culture, people-centric leadership. I think you had either 5 or 7 keys, if I'm not mistaken. I'm sorry for not knowing that off the top of my head. What are some of the people-centric keys to leadership, Stan?
Yeah, well, let me give you a few of them right now, and we've already
Okay.
talked about some of them, even through my football experience. But I will tell you, in fact, I've got a master class coming up in about another month and a half, and that's going to really cover on all 7. And if you go to my website, stangibsonspeaks.com, I give that away. It's a PDF
Okay.
that I love for people to read about. But to me, even though there's 7, they can almost be encompassed into a 3-legged stool. One of them is this authenticity. It's this EQ. It's this ability to know who you are and know who you're not. Again, I really believe that the best leaders learn to coach. In fact, I have a saying that when leaders learn to coach, employees learn to lead. And so even just this morning, I was talking with a leader, because, we were talking about, you've got to learn how to reframe, ask questions. You've got to quit enabling. You're the smartest guy in the room. We all know it, but you can't continue down that road. It's not, we've got to work on the emotional intelligence. So I work with a lot of teams, not only on their ability to lead differently, but we also do a lot of self-awareness, and we do team awareness. So that's component number 1. The second component is really around this well-being, because I really do believe that you've got to take care of you. And when you understand the science around it, you're right, we're all facing burnout. And so that's a very critical component too. And then the third piece is, I believe that people don't use their time wisely. I think productivity is, if you want to really live truly a balanced life, you have to understand how to condense a 12-hour workday into 8 hours or into 7 hours. And there's so many different things, whether it be systems that you're using, whether it be, and I'll just give you an example, even a very simple example. Our brain weighs 2 to 2.5% of our body weight, yet it consumes over 25% of our energy and our output. And
Wow.
when we're on a computer screen all day, and especially on Zoom, and especially it even magnifies when you're looking at yourself instead of somebody else, but it actually taxes the output of the brain 1.5 to 2x. So when you've been on the computer screen or your phone excessive amounts of time, what might seem like an 8 to 9 hour day is a 13 to 14 hour day. Your brain has literally been taxed that much. So understanding, how to be more productive, and the fact that we all make 35,000 decisions a day. and how to start to build routines so that you can kind of go on autopilot for the things that deserve to be on autopilot and keep those brain cells that you need for doing your job or doing the things that around the house with, with your spouse, with your kids that you want to do. So I kind of look at it in those 3 buckets, but there are several different subcomponents in there that make up the 7 components of a people-centric leader.
Stan, I feel like I just scratched the surface. I would love to have you back in a couple of months or so if your schedule permits. I want to make sure you saw this because you're probably paying attention. Jeff Herring is a friend and a longtime coaching client, and he's also been a guest on the show 3 times over the last 6 years. He says, with the possible exception of me, Stan's the best guest you've ever had on. So there you go.
Thank you.
High praise.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I see you're down in Florida. Are you in Florida? Is that where you are?
We are in Florida. Yeah, we're in Ocala, Florida right now. We'll be in Florida for another month, and then we hit the Gulf Coast, and then up through Alabama and going into the Great Smoky Mountains. We're going to see as much of this big, beautiful country as we can, as long as this.
Well, good. Well, if you stop by, so Hurricane Ian took us out of commission, so we actually have residents in Placida, which is right outside of the island of Boca Grande, and so we haven't been there for a while because. Again, it takes a while to get things rebuilt. We're actually out in Scottsdale for a year or 2 with our grandkids. But no, Florida is very special to us. And when you say Captain Jim Miller, I just get excited because I know a lot of great captains down there that take us on great boating expeditions. And we just that's a big part of that culture down there. And it's awesome.
Wonderful. Hey, Stan, how can people connect with you? Where do you want them to go? Do you want them to go to Amazon for the book, or do you have it at your website? Go ahead and give the 411.
You can do either, but I'll tell you what, I would really prefer you go to stangibsonspeaks.com, and I'll tell you why. Because there you can either pick up the PDF on the 7 habits of highly effective leaders, or you can also go into the resources and you can pick up, I have a PDF on living a rich and intentional life. What is the science behind sleep? What is the science behind exercise and nutrition? So you can get that there, but also the kicker to that is I have a newsletter that comes out on Thursday, and it's a quick one. And while I don't understand the magic of it, I just write what I think people are interested in. I have a very high open rate. It's 50%, and they tell me 10 to 15 is good. And so anyway, if you want to be part of this, I've got a couple of different formats that I use that people love. And again, it touches on well-being, it touches on leadership, and it also touches on what my wife and I are watching, reading, or doing, because it tends to be things that people want to watch, read, or do as well. So if you come to my website, we'll get you hooked up on any of those.
That's awesome. Stan, thank you so much. I greatly appreciate your time today.
Thank you very much. Love it. And thanks to all your listeners. May you all live a rich and intentional life.
Hey, folks, that wraps up this very special episode with Stan Gibson. You can connect with him at stangibsonspeaks.com. You can connect with me at getjimpalmer.com. If you're interested in joining me in about 27 other very smart entrepreneurs in my Dream Business Mastermind and Coaching Program, you go to dreambizcoaching.com, dreambizcoaching.com. This interview will live on in infamy at my YouTube channel starting tomorrow. It's a good way to share it rather than trying to share social media. Hey, by the way, remember, you can get free digital copies of all 6 of my books at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and they're also in the iBook store. But that's it. Until this time next week, another fantastic episode. I'm Captain Jim Palmer, and I'm a Dream Business Coach, and you take good care.